everybody. It's time to get back into our study of Northern High Renaissance art, and we're going to travel to the Netherlands to meet a real icon and an artist that you probably will never forget, Hieronymus Bosch. So let's get to that PowerPoint here and take a look at what I'm talking about. All right, the title of the piece is Garden of Earthly Delights. Garden of Earthly Delights from 1505 to 1510. I'll take my view away so you can see the full title and dates associated with something that looks a lot like an altarpiece, right? It looks like it's in a triptych format. It has a central panel that measures approximately 7 feet by 6 feet. It's got the side panels as well. And like some other altarpieces or triptychs that we've met before, the wings do close. And so what you find when the piece closes is that it looks something like this. You have this very interesting kind of black and white world, an orb that has some aquatic features and clouds and land masses, almost like a kind of a primeval world. So maybe Hieronymus Bosch's allusion to when God created the world. Then you kind of have a Wizard of Oz moment, remember that movie where it transitions when Dorothy lands in Oz from a black and white movie to a full color movie. That was sort of the wow factor back in the 1930s. But here we are in the 16th century, and what you have instead is this three-panel painting. Now, we're going to begin talking about it and moving from left to right. And it's here we're going to meet this artist with his famous long first name, who is considered sort of the master of the surreal before surrealism was a thing. Before Salvador Dali and all the other famous surrealists we'll meet later in this semester. He was the master of the imaginary and of both the fantastical but horrific as well. So let's get to what we see on the left-hand side. And moving along here, I'll give you some shots of that. What you find is a deep landscape view that takes you almost, 3/4 up the panel of the painting. And what you find in the foreground here, and this is a detail shot of that foreground, is a figure in robes who looks a lot like Jesus, but that's supposed to represent God. And we know that God created Adam and Eve. So yes, if you suspected that this couple displayed nude, male and female, are Adam and Eve, you are spot on. What is surprising, though, is if that is Adam and Eve, it seems like this is kind of Bosch's version of the Garden of Eden. But whereas an earlier artist in the Netherlands, like Jan van Eyck, when you think of the Ghent altarpiece, went outside, for instance, and looked at the landscape of his Northern European country and kind of mimicked that as a backdrop to his religious art. What you find Bosch doing is seemingly just drawing purely from his wild imagination. So not only in the foreground do you have all kinds of crazy agave or desert looking plants, right? Like something we might find here in Southern California and definitely never in the Netherlands, but also fantastic beasts, like imaginary beasts, three-headed birds, a little black unicorn swimming in this pond, that type of thing, mixed with other animals like bunnies and birds that we do recognize, a cat with a mouse, which is likely a reference to the devil, trying to grab or take advantage of tempting people to sin. Moving to the middle ground, you have another element common in these scenes by Bosch, at least in this painting, are these kind of fantastical, kind of like gourd-like organic sculptural elements. Again, no real rationale or explanation or connection to any kind of Christian symbolism. They're just there in a surreal way. Also in this sort of mixed bag in terms of horticulture and plant and animal life, is, giraffes and elephants, more unicorns having a sip of water in this pool of water. And then, geography, these kind of almost look like Dairy Queen, soft serve cone inspired mountaintops, which, have no reference to the Netherlands where, Hermanus Bosch is from. So again, all this Garden of Eden kind of drawn from the imagination of the artist. Moving then, there's a detailed shot of that elephant and giraffe. I know, crazy, right? Moving to the center of the composition here, you can see a very busy composition, very crowded, lots of activity. And the overarching theme of the center of the composition has to do with kind of a theme of paradise lost. There's a certain playfulness that you see here going on here. There are some sub-themes of fertility and procreation going on here. Some of it quite innocent and childlike interactions of male and female figures. Again, the nudity continues. Some a little bit more racy in the background, by the way. I won't show you too much detail in that regard. But it's sort of a festival-like playground. I don't know, I like to think of Coachella a little bit, the music festival out in the California desert, where they tend to take over these polo grounds, and then there are lots of, huge art installations and people, frolicking, having the best time ever, listening to all the bands perform for several days. Well, there's no rock music here, but there could be. But there's lots of people, riding animals, doing acrobatics, climbing all over more of these strange gourd-like sculptural elements in this landscape setting that Bosch has created. Let's take a look at some of the detail shots of the foreground. And it's here you can see, again, males and females, Caucasian, black as well, some kind of a reference to kind of a multiracial kind of experience in this realm. The other thing you find also are things that are disproportionate, oversized berries, birds as well. Birds acting almost like caretakers, as if humans are, baby birds that need to be fed by the mother bird. Berries serving as kind of like little playhouses or food sources. Again, when you think of berries or even birds, berries have seeds, especially, blackberries, raspberries, that kind of thing. So seeds generate more of the plant. So that is your kind of allusion to fertility. Same with fish that you see here, or birds produce eggs. Eggs also a symbol of rebirth or fertility. So that's why you see so many of those going on here in this scene. Other detail shots continue showing giant birds, people riding birds on horseback in a way, birds as like playmates, references to eggs. Again, it's all surreal, dreamlike, and strange. Again, people gathered around, giant strawberries, pigging out. Even references to pods and flowers like thistles that produce seeds. All this kind of theme of progeneration, fertility, that kind of thing going on in the center panel. Let's then pivot now to the far panel. And things, as you can see, the palette gets quite a bit darker, and that's because this panel is supposed to represent Bosch's version of hell. Bosch's version of hell, well, this is where you're going to see some things that will stick with you for the rest of your life. Now, don't worry, it's not all frightening. There is some stuff that's there that will entertain and give you a chuckle as well. So let's move on to that final panel. What I'm showing you is the top third of the panel. And here, you know, for any of you heading into lighting design, this is a great example of kind of uplighting and backlighting that Bosch has rendered in his version of a hellscape, using silhouette to show the fiery infernos and structures associated with hell. And that, of course, is the destination for sinners who have been condemned to that fate. If we thought Michelangelo's version of hell was pretty intimidating, Bosch's is definitely more disturbing and nightmarish. Look at this creature with a body that looks like some kind of a hollowed out, cracked egg, naked tree trunks suspended in boats, a face that might be the face of the artist himself, Bosch, staring out at us, the viewer. A tabletop kind of hat with a bagpipe kind of organ-like device, which you have to imagine being this kind of cacophony of horrible music that's part of the torment of the experience of hell. Birds you see here and there, but they're no longer the playmates and providers of the humans in the center panel. Now they seem to be the tormentors and torturers of the souls who've been sent to hell. Look at this strange mix of ears skewered by arrows with a knife jutting out, other people or souls being, you know, devoured by all kinds of horrible beasts. So it's a real, like, you know, I Spy experience looking at a Hieronymus Bosch painting, taking in all the little scenarios and details contained within. Just a quick flashback to Grunewald's and Michelangelo's version of monsters and demons who torture you, and famous biblical figures. They look like the stuff children would play with by comparison, right? On the bottom of Bosch's painting is an amusing king, if you can call him that. You have a bird who wears kind of a chamber pot as a crown, seated on a throne. I don't know about your house, but the nickname of our commode or toilet is the throne, and it seems to be something that has a old history. As you see this bird seemingly eating humans and then defecating them as fast as he swallows them. So there is a fair degree of anal humor. I bet you didn't think you would be hearing about anal humor in an art history class, but birds flying out of the posterior of this victim, and then humans falling into this kind of abyss down below here. A couple references to sins are illuminated for the viewer as warnings. This guy is being tormented by perpetually vomiting. That's a warning against the sin of gluttony. And then here you see somebody defecating gold coins. That is a warning against the sin of greed. So remember that. This is very common in the North, right? We are familiar with their passion for symbolism and in the art of the fantastical imagination of Hieronymus Bosch. He uses a little bit of humor, a little bit of kind of childlike, grotesque humor as well to share a few warnings to the 16th century Netherlandish citizen about what can happen to you if you are not a good Christian. So a totally non-traditional painting. It has a unusual approach to the Christian message, but it was not executed for a church or a cathedral. They think it was a private commission. Anyway, the inimitable Hieronymus Bosch for you guys. Anybody who's fans of the detective show and book series by Michael Connelly and the Amazon Prime series Bosch, if you wonder where the main character Harry Bosch got his name,